Hello everybody, welcome back to this little micro course in orchestral programming, how to make orchestral samples sound realistic so that it makes your audience actually go, ah, and not. So what we've got onto today is legato. Now, legato is, it's Italian for tied, and it means sort of one note tied to another. The way sample developers mean it isn't, strictly speaking, exactly the same as the way you'd learn it in music theory. But this is the point. Okay, once again, he picks up the Irish whistle. Oh no. So if you played a line like this, with each note individual, it's a very different sound to it going. Now, what is the difference there? What is going on? When you do that, you're playing the first note and the second note, and there is a tiny fractional little note in between the two. There is a sound in between the two as you go from one note to the other. That is the challenging bit for sample developers. That's a really hard thing to do. But over the course of the years, they have come up with some stunning technology which does exactly that. And the way they do it, they sample the first note, they sample the second note, and they sample all the little transitions in between, and they put it together in a really clever piece of software so that it inserts that little legato bit and it makes it sound realistic. So here is Vienna, the Synchron player. This is their special edition flute. Vienna were one of the first, VSL were one of the first organisations in the world to nail this, and it sounds incredible. This is long notes without legato. Okay, and now with legato. It's complete. It just gives it, sounds like a real person is there actually playing the note. Okay, so why don't you just use legato for everything? Because not every note, not every phrase is naturally played that way. And if you just say, okay, I'm going to play all my lines legato, it's not going to sound realistic, because sometimes players are going to play, you know, particularly brass players, they're going to go bomb, bomb, etc. And if you make everything legato, it's going to sound unrealistic. Now, there's a number of points about legatos. If we take, what have we got here? Which one's this? Let's have a look. Well, let's take another example. Here is Cinematic Studio solo strings. This is their cello. Now, what happens when you play faster or slower? Because if I'm a cellist and I'm playing slowly, you're going to hear a longer legato transition. Than if I play it. So what the sample developers have to do is develop a technology which detects how fast you're playing and therefore changes the speed of the legato transition. Now, there are so many different ways in which this is the sort of bleeding edge, the cutting edge of where sample technology has sort of got to, and people are trying to make these legatos sound super intuitive, so it just responds to your way of playing without you having to do a ton of programming. And you will find when you start playing different programs, they just respond differently, and you need to learn its, the bit of the instrument which works best. So if we take legendary low strings from in the Abbey Road, for example, I thought that was some weird sound on my thing, and it's a plane flying over. Sorry, no. Anyway, where was I? Right. So if you listened, that sounds completely different to somebody else's, and it sounds completely different to the longs. You see how they sound like individual notes rather than an actual line of music. And once again, I come back to the point I make a lot. You got to think like a musician. You got to think as though you're playing that instrument. How would the musicians actually play those sounds? Now, the thing to bear in mind with legatos is they can be very demanding in terms of the amount of memory they use, and in terms of sometimes in terms of the CPU as well, because your computer is going to be doing a lot more thinking. And remember, it's loading in all these little interstitial kind of samples as well, the ones between the first note and the second note and all the rest of it. So really experiment with your particular instrument and how legato has been implemented, because there is no one size fits all, and try and work out where the best ways and times to use legato. Don't overuse legato. I know a lot of the time I've had libraries which don't have legatos and they still sound absolutely fantastic. If you get a really good legato, and we play some stunning ones from VSL and Spitfire and Cinematic Studio Strings today, you can see that once you get in the groove of how that particular instrument works, you're going to be able to produce something which is going to sound much, much more lifelike. And every time somebody brings out a new instrument, there's some new sort of technology which helps the legato sound better, because that's where they're putting an awful lot of the time, the money and effort. But look, do use legatos. Don't overuse them by any stretch of the imagination, and learn how, what sounds best. Sometimes you will find some particular intervals don't work as well as others, and you sort of think, why is that? Hang on, let me just, that works great. That works great too. I mean, I've had some libraries in the past where some intervals just go, ugh, I don't like that at all. That's just, and it sounds doesn't sound particularly real. So look, go and play with your legatos. Really? Is that what you're saying, Guy? Go play with the legatos? Yeah, go play with your legato. But work it in with all this other stuff. Remember the dynamics. Remember the articulation. You've got lots of articulation. You don't just have to use legato all the time. Use those controllers, use that, and slowly and surely produce one line of music, just one line of music, one instrument that sounds realistic. Don't try and do the whole orchestra at once. Do one line of music. And I'm going to be back tomorrow to talk about sizes of sections, ensemble, chamber, solo. Exciting times. Okay, so download the PDF, which is underneath this. Subscribe to the channel. You're welcome, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.